sunshine, blue skies, marine clouds. Just a perfect day to go outside and relax. That's your forecast. We'll be right back.
Yeah, sunny days, sunny days, sunny days. No clouds in the sky, but again, away feels like it's been.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Social Beaches. I'm Carolyn Smith.
I'm Kelly Bowling.
And we sell real estate all along the Space Coast into Indian River County. And if you have a question or interested in buying or selling, we would love to hear from you. You can call or text us at 321-422-2160. Email us at hello@coastalestateteam.com or reach out to us on whatever platform that you are currently watching on. And today we are going to talk about short-term rentals because we think it's a hot topic. It's definitely a hot topic in Florida, but also I recently saw an article where Spain, I don't know if it's Spain in general or Barcelona. Barcelona had moved to ban rentals to tourists because it was raising the prices of their housing for people who actually are residents of Barcelona.
Which, I mean, that's what happens in all of the areas that have short-term rentals. New York City experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
And that they thought that the comptroller's office in New York City found that almost 10%, so 9% and change of the rent increases that were imposed by landlords between 2009 and 2016 were directly attributable to Airbnbs.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be interesting just as a, caveat to this because a lot of hotels now are saying, wait a minute, Airbnbs have taken away some of our business, and so we are going to operate more. We're going to develop rooms and suites and things that
have like
provide
the kitchens so that you can, you can have that
a longer term stay without being in like one of these residence inns or something like that. Mm-hmm. So I feel that, we'll see what happens with that, but we definitely are seeing in Florida, especially, so every state, and every municipality is different. So prior to the laws that are in effect now in Florida, every municipality sort of set their own guidelines.
Yes. You
could have no short-term rentals. You could have a 3-month minimum, 6-month minimum, no minimum. You just didn't even address it.
Right.
So I'll take Melbourne Beach, for example, which is where I live, within the town of Melbourne Beach. And you live in unincorporated Brevard County, still Melbourne Beach, but it's unincorporated. So in unincorporated Brevard County, it's a 90-day.
Yes.
3-month minimum rental for single-family homes.
Yes.
We're only talking about single-family homes.
Yes.
In Melbourne Beach, they just never put a law on the books. It wasn't an issue. People weren't really renting their houses.
Right.
It wasn't something anyone thought about. So then the legislature came along and said, wait, Florida tourism is dependent on people coming. We want them to stay. We want to allow. So they said, if you don't have a law on your books already prior to this date, and it wasn't the date the law was going to take effect, it was backdating.
Okay.
If you don't have a law on your books already, you can't put one in.
Right.
You can't put one in.
You could only grandfather in if there was one that existed. So was Indy Atlantic one of those that had one?
Indy Atlantic had one. It was 3 months. Satellite Beach, I think, is 6 months. Indian Harbor Beach did not have a law. Cocoa Beach did not have a law. Melbourne Beach did not have a law. County, of course, had a law. So what happened was everyone in these municipalities was like, wait, we want to do something, and now we can't because they've gone back and sort of this has come up and they backdated it and said you can't. So I don't know about you, but I don't want to live next door to a house that's being rented on a short-term basis.
I don't either.
But in Melbourne Beach, where I live, they are allowed. And the municipality can put in restrictions.
Yes.
Like you have to have inspections, you have to be licensed, you have to meet all these things, you have to pay fees.
Like only so many people to a bedroom, like that kind of thing.
Yes, but who's really policing it? And I will tell you, so a house catty corner to me is being rented short term. It's not rented very often, probably because of the price of renting it. But the last people who came had a dog. And they left the dog, this is summertime, in the garage. And one of the neighbors who lives there went over and got in a big fight with these people. And I thought, this is just not, we don't want that. Like, no. I don't want to live with that going on.
Right.
You know, I really wish we had a 3-month minimum. And I believe they're trying to pass a law that says it doesn't matter if you already had one. Now you can't. You can't enforce that past law. So I don't think that will go through, but I think there's a push now.
Right.
And I just think it's not really necessary. Do we need to have?
I don't think so. And I think I get, wanting to be able to do whatever you want to do with your own property. It just not when it affects other homeowners that are neighboring you.
Yes.
I don't think that that's fair because that does disturb their peace.
Yes.
You've got loads of cars. I've seen some people complaining
Oh, my
locally
gosh.
here where it's like a party house and there will be like 10 families, 10 vehicles in a driveway on the street,
Yeah.
blocking things up, and then they're loud. They're out in the backyard.
Till midnight, 1 in the morning on weeknights when people have to go to work or
Now,
school.
There certainly are people who rent Airbnbs
Yes.
who are respectful
Yes.
and they are good citizens to, the neighbors that are surrounding them. So it's not all the time that that's happening, but it really only takes once. And then it's a possibility, it can happen again. I don't know.
I feel like when I've rented Airbnbs, VRBO, I've rented those. We're very quiet. We, when they're in neighborhoods, we don't have parties. We aren't like putting big loads of trash out on the curb for the dogs to tear up or something. I mean, all that. But the problem is there's so many people who've bought Airbnbs that don't police them and that don't regulate. And the question is, can the municipality, are they set up to really monitor and enforce the rules that the municipality now has put in to try and combat
Right.
because
I don't
they can't
think like the
restrict
little
them.
ones, like in our area, I don't think that they have the dollar power, the manpower to do that policing. Like if they can respond to a complaint.
Yes.
So it's like you get to be the police, you
Yeah.
know, and then you get to be the one to report, and then
you have to get somebody to come out and deal with it.
and it can be frustrating. And then you're also dealing at the same time with small town politics.
Yeah.
And it just, when you read some of the stuff that happens in these small towns and their little local governments and the meetings, it's like watching a reality show, honestly,
is.
sometimes, because
Yeah.
people aren't getting along and, people just getting, honestly, butthurt, so then they quit. I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it does happen.
It's true.
Yeah, and then you go on Facebook and see them posting about it, and it's like, oh, got some entertainment today.
But if you think you're going to elect an official because they're against Airbnbs, realize that in Florida, at least, they're restricted from what they can do.
They can't just ban them. So
They
even though
can't.
they don't like them and they tell you, well, I'm going to do something, they can't. Their
they
hands
can't.
are tied.
Their
so.
hands are tied.
Yeah.
And it is true, if we look at just our little section of the world, that the areas that allow short-term rentals, the prices are higher
They are.
for single-family homes than in the neighboring town that is very similar in character but doesn't allow
really
it.
took off here, I feel like, when prices got crazy anyhow,
Yes.
right after COVID.
Yes.
But we both had a ton of buyers that
Yes.
were investors, Airbnb investors, and that's specifically what they were looking for. And because the restrictions were pretty lax
Yeah.
in Indian Harbor,
Yeah.
that was the gold mine. And you knew if you had a listing in Indian Harbor, that was going to be your buyer. It was going to be an investor that
Yeah.
was looking for that.
Or
And-
there's someone who wanted to have like a second home in Florida, but they wanted to be able to rent it
Yes.
when they weren't here. And they
Yes.
didn't want to be tied to like a 3-month rental because they wanted to be able to maybe come during that 3
Right.
months.
Well, I have the people that are buying the one oceanfront now, which
Yeah.
there are some areas of unincorporated Brevard where you can do an Airbnb because it's zoned as such,
Yes.
like multifamily,
Yes.
right?
Well, multifamily, they don't fall under, and any of the areas don't fall under the same guidelines. So it's up to the multifamily community
Right,
to set
to
their
decide.
guidelines.
So they'll be able to, they want to come and use their place on the weekends.
Yes.
But they also want the option to rent it out to help cover some of the expenses.
Yes. Yeah.
When they need to. And she's like, we're not going to be at the beach when it's cold here. And yes, sometimes it does get cold here.
Yeah.
So, but other people will think, it's so funny because you can always tell that they're visiting. They're not
Because
from
they go
here.
in the ocean.
They'll be it's 60 degrees outside.
I'm
They're wearing
like,
a swimsuit.
yeah, no. You're lucky if I'm putting my toe in the middle of summer. I'm like, it's cold.
It is cold.
Yeah.
Yes, this is true.
The
It needs to
Atlantic
be
is
like
cold,
a
if you're
bath
wondering.
water.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it.
Yeah,
but
west coast of Florida is warmer. Gulf Stream.
Definitely.
But yeah, it is true. And I think, I don't know, I personally wish that they would have the ability to not allow those. I think it's not good there's a lot of things that are impacting home buyers now.
Mm-hmm.
These big corporations buying blocks of homes and renting them out. Now we're talking
Yes.
long term.
Yes.
Turning everyone
There's whole
into
communities that are were
Yes.
built as, I was watching on TikTok too, were a community that was built to sell to people. So they
Yes.
sold a phase, right?
Yes.
And then the
Horrible.
builder sells out to one of these corporations who
Yes.
then turns it into a rental community. So now
Yes.
there is a difference, and it does
Yes.
affect property values when it's turned into like a community where most people are renting.
Yes.
And then it's a big corporation, because one corporation owning all of those homes, what if they just go under and they don't pay the HOA fees?
Well, and also think about it, if individual homeowners or home buyers had the opportunity to purchase those homes, and now they're all rentals, they're owned by the same thing, that took away all that inventory.
Yeah.
All that opportunity for people to buy a home. They say that this is like a big issue that's going to be addressed more at a national level, like how. But I don't know how you address it. Like I have no idea.
I don't know either. I don't know how
But
a
it
law
is
could be passed that says you're
horrible.
not allowed to buy. I will say there are builders here in different communities that will not sell to investors.
Yeah.
Especially when things were super hot and
Yeah.
popping. That was it was a no-go.
Or you can't rent for the first year.
First year, there's communities like that, like some of the existing ones even. But I think that as sales have slowed, their willingness to sell to whomever has the money,
Yeah.
that creeps up because they're
Yeah.
not selling like they were. So they
It's-
have all this sitting inventory. So they're trying things like offering incentives to home buyers and lower interest rates and, closing cost bonuses to realtors. Like
Yeah.
they're doing all of these things. And I think if it gets to the point where they still aren't selling them, I mean, why would the company turn away an investor? They're not going to
Is
do
going to
it.
buy a big group of homes, by the way, and also not be as picky. I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about if they're
They don't
buying new
care.
construction, there was
Yeah.
a whole D.R. Horton community
Oh,
that
yes.
was
That
recently
was
sold
local.
in our area.
Yeah.
They sold the whole thing, and D.R. Horton doesn't care, and D.R. Horton then doesn't have to worry about, well, you're not happy with the quality of something or whether they fix something
Nope.
because
Makes it easy.
it makes it easy for them. And it's unfortunate because we think that home buying is still your best path to like wealth for people starting out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
for
most
sure.
people's biggest asset.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think you're seeing it in other countries and New York.
Yes.
What did
Yeah.
New York end up doing?
So they had like a little bit of a fallout over what they did, but many types because the housing costs went up high.
Yeah.
Let's see, September of 2023, they call it Local Law 18. It went into effect there. It requires all short-term rentals that are less than 30 days hosts to register with the city, or they can face a fine of up to $5,000.
That's a good find.
And then
yeah.
it also prohibits the booking platforms from processing any transaction for a property that is not registered.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good way to make
Yeah.
them accountable, right?
Yeah.
So it said, this is interesting, the measure was passed in order to end the proliferation of illegal short-term rentals and to enforce the existing prohibition against rentals of fewer than 30 days unless the host is present. So if the host is on
So
site,
if you're renting a room.
yes.
Yeah.
So the result of that between August and October of last year was that the number of short-term rentals in New York City plunged 85%.
Oh my gosh.
That's a big drop. So that's really interesting. And they said that, they have like licensing and registration requirements, limitations on rental nights. And I didn't know this, but this says that San Francisco was the birthplace of Airbnb.
Oh, I didn't know
One
that
of the
either.
early adopters of short-term rental regulations also. So in 2014, they said that only a permanent resident who has registered with the city was allowed to be a short-term rental host.
Yeah.
And to be a permanent resident, you have to reside in a unit for at least 275 nights per year.
Oh.
So that, whatever you're trying to rent out, you have to at least
so
occupy
you can't be
it.
an investor and rent short term. I think that what it's going to take is the hotels. The big hotel companies like the Hiltons and the Radisson, whatever, that all the big hotel companies are going to have to say, hey, they're going to have to lobby, right? It's affecting our business, so we're going to lobby against this short-term rental thing.
Right.
And they have to have enough firepower because I think that or, again, people who can't buy homes.
Yeah.
Something like that, because I don't know what's going to stop it. Although Airbnb's, honestly, this is just my personal opinion. When I first started doing it, when I did it, I never worried about, are there cameras? Are they watching
I didn't worry
me?
about that. Not in
And
the beginning, but now I do.
Now I feel like
We can't even show a house without cameras being on us.
there's
so
cameras
you know they have them.
all the time. They have listening devices. Even if
Yeah.
you can't see it, there's listening devices shoved in drawers,
Mm-hmm.
attached somewhere. So you know when you're renting an Airbnb, they may not have cameras, but they got listening devices. They and the way they hide the cameras now, like they hide them. They're like in the light switch thing,
Oh,
or
yeah.
behind the mirror, or
You know,
I
whatever
don't
happened to
know.
the good old days with the nanny cams? It was like in a teddy bear on the
Yes.
shelf.
Then you knew. So you
Yeah.
have to assume that they're watching you. They're watching
They
you.
for sure are. Yep.
And I don't think hotels do.
No,
I hope not.
I don't know. You talk about like that two-way mirror glass stuff and how to tell if it is or
The
isn't.
maintenance guy.
I don't know.
You. Creepy. Okay.
You know, so that's all. So
Yeah. All right.
no paranoia later when you go to the hotel or the Airbnb. But
Yeah.
that's all we have for
Yeah,
today.
I think so. All right.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Cheers.
Weather forecast today.